So you filleted it, which takes out these bones.
Yeah, and then you typically have that line of bones up
Right
front
here.
that are real pokey.
Yeah.
And
the small ones.
So I don't remember the chef we watched.
Oh, it's so good. Oh my gosh. Welcome to Big Fish Stories, the podcast dedicated to telling the real outdoor stories of adventure, hunting, and fishing. For the outdoors men and women who get lost in the stories around the campfire, this is the place for you. My name is Tyler Hendricks, located in the great state of Idaho, and today I have with me my good friend and former high school teacher, taught me chemistry. What else did you teach me?
Physics.
We
did tug of war.
We did tug of war in your class. Yep. I think you had a lesson that you were going to teach about
The heavier
friction.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember it. So that was a great lesson. I think you put on some shoes that would stick really well to the floor, and you were showing how even a littler guy could push a big guy.
Yeah, because it was me against you.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember you did it so hard at first, and I just didn't move. And you're like, okay, I need to figure out how to create some more friction here. But yeah, all these amazing lessons. And one of the big lessons that you've taught me is every time I have a conversation with you, it's all about wild game meat. And I know that that's a big source of nutrition in your life. You may be at the point where you only eat wild game meat. I don't know. But I'm excited to talk to you and catch up and see how things are going.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah.
And I think that was just right on. The only non-wild game are the pigs from Cary. Mm-hmm. And that was the one thing that was like, oh, we're going to do a elk grind. And I like to add pork shoulder to that. I think it makes a really nice elk burger.
Oh, yeah.
But that was from the store, and my wife would always be like, "Oh, you just took that amazing thing.
You're cheating. You're taking, yeah.
And
it's not wild game now.
Yeah. And then I started thinking, well, I'll travel to Northern California and I'll go do a pig hunt. Mm-hmm. And then I started thinking, no, I'm just going to raise pigs. So finally I got around to just raising the pigs, which was so great.
That's awesome.
For so many reasons.
Mm-hmm. And you were able to feed the pigs exactly what you wanted to eat.
Which actually, so that's another whole story too, is like feeding the pigs. They needed a protein source. And so we started talking to the grocery stores, and there's all this stuff that they just throw away. So there's milk and eggs. And so I made a lot of scrambled eggs for the pigs, and they would have cinnamon rolls that were expired, the little Pillsbury, break them open. And so I'm making cinnamon rolls for the pigs. And so, I mean,
they had the best life.
They did. And I just it was a great feeling to take something that was going to end up in the dumpster. That's where it was going. If I didn't pick that stuff up, it was in the dumpster, and that was the 100% protein source for 5 pigs that we raised. So it was probably like 1,000 gallons of milk.
Gosh.
And I think we did like 600 dozen eggs.
That's crazy. How fat were these pigs by the end?
They were 300 pounders. So Stu, our head butcher in Cary, we were butchering this pig, and so I dispatched it, and it's laying on the ground, and he's a big guy. He's not quite as big as you, but he's a big guy.
Right.
So he grabbed the hind legs, and I grabbed the front legs, and we're just going to pick him up onto this kind of a low wagon, and we couldn't budge it. we just expected to be able to kind of get it going, and we didn't even move it. And we just started laughing, and it's like, how are we going to move this thing?
Right.
So they were a lot bigger than any deer, and well, you never have the opportunity to try to do something like that with an elk. And it wasn't elk size, but they were big pigs and just ultimately so tasty. So for my wife, she met the pigs, and they were...
That's what I was going to ask. What happens when your wife meets the pigs?
And
how do you do it then?
And they're so friendly.
They are.
They're so friendly, and they're funny, and you're in the middle of summer, and you spray the hose at them, and they start bucking around, and they kind of act like dogs, and they're so smart.
They have personality.
Yeah, so that was like this tough part, and before the pork came home, Gina was saying, the turkeys, we did turkeys too. So before the pork came home, she was just like, really like, I don't think the pork is a good idea. Let's maybe not do the pork next year.
Yep.
And then the pork came home.
It only took one taste.
It really literally
Yeah.
took one taste. And she was just like, this is so spectacular.
Right.
It's so good. So
I think that's why, because I like the idea of raising my own animals, and I'd love to do chickens at some point when I get some land. But I think that's why I hunt, is because you know, sometimes you find herds of deer that you get to know because you're not wanting to shoot any within that herd. You're looking for something different. And then it gets to the point where at the end of the year, you're like, I have to take something, and this herd is still here, but now I've gotten to know them just a little bit, and it's hard for me to pull the trigger. I'm for sure that way with bears. I can't shoot a bear to save my life, because every time I see a bear in the wild, it's doing something super cute. I've gone on 2 bear hunts, and this happened both times on the bear hunt. And we don't bait the bears or anything. We go and find them. And the first time, we saw this bear on the top of this ridge, and it was a big, beautiful cinnamon bear, and he was laying on his back with a huge berry bush in his arms, just sunning himself and stripping berries off while sunning himself, laying on his back. How can you possibly shoot an animal that's doing that? Yeah. And then second one was a big, huge male black bear. And I thought for sure this is going to be the one. Like, he's old, he's ready to go, and I couldn't even shoot him. He was rolling logs down the mountain. He'd find an old dead log, roll it down the mountain, and then he'd jump up and down while it rolled out of excitement. Yeah. I'm like, they're doing what I would be doing out there. I can't shoot these things. So I think I have to barely know the animal in order to be okay with it.
Well, I knew those pigs really pretty well.
Right.
And that's the other part of like eating meat that I think is important, where if you're going to choose to eat meat, it's like, I'm going to be fully responsible for this.
Right.
And so I dispatched every pig. Yep. Like, that was my job. It wasn't somebody else's job. And it's not necessarily easy, but it's part of it. It's part of like, it's
part of life.
Like, and do it. And I'm going to do it just right and as clean as I possibly can. And as soon as that deed is kind of over, it's over. And then, you know, you just move on. It's time to skin. It's time to gut and hang it up. And, you know.
And out of any hunter I've ever met, you are the most particular about how did that person miss? Or how did that person wound the animal? You know, like, I know that you take that very serious. And so you're making sure to make sure that your gun is shooting perfect, that you're going to hit the animal in the best spot that you possibly can to put it down as quickly as you can, because you care about that. And
well, you care about that when you've screwed it up a few times, and you spend the days looking for those animals, and once you've done it long enough, you come into a herd where you see one that's been messed up. I remember when I think I was in college, like, there was this pretty nice buck bedded underneath this tree, and I shot it, and I thought, wow, how did we get so close and everything? Well, it turns out they had like 5 bullet holes in it, you know? And so it's a lifetime of stuff that comes together where you just try to do it well. And you know, fairly recently with people that I try to mentor, and I learn a lot from mentoring people, you know, just really trying to make sure that they're ready for, you know, what's going to happen out there. Because the first people I took out is like, oh yeah, you can shoot, and whatever they can say whatever. But now I make sure that I spend at least a day in the field and like really have them shoot at the targets and have them try different positions and have them be ready, because I've seen the ugly side of things where fortunately, like, you learn from this, where fortunately a guy takes a shot and I don't see any response from the animal. And then fortunately, instead of just running onto the private land, which is literally 10 feet away, this cow elk turns and comes back and stands right in the middle of our shooting lane, and he takes this elk. Well, the first shot was a super bad shot, like right in the guts.
Right.
And that animal was like this far away from just dying this horrific death.
Right.
And so immediately I knew, not only with that particular hunter, but it was like, and others in the future, not to take anything for granted. It's like, and then so that particular hunter, who's an older guy that needs I give him some assistance. Maybe he needs some, I give him some assistance out there, but I try to shoot with him every summer now, like 4 or 5 times. And with just some of that practice, he shoots really well. And his shots since then have been, dead on.
Right.
So,
and you have a very different style of hunting than a lot of the guys out here, which I really appreciate. Tell me a little bit about what's your favorite style of hunting.
I'll take elk. Are you talking about elk?
Yeah.
I'll take elk any way I can get them.
Right.
I mean, I'll get them from the roadway.
Yeah.
Is that what you're? Not that I killed them on the road.
Like you've talked about taking them off the river as well, right?
Oh yeah. So I've had elk that have been roadkill, and then for about 6 years, every elk that I harvested for myself was a river bottom elk.
Yeah,
just
and that's
a great elk to get.
For those who are unfamiliar, in where we live, we have a highway, we have a river, and then we have a mountain range. And oftentimes these elk get pinned down by the river and realize, oh, we can just hang out down here, which is oftentimes bad for them, especially if we have really heavy winters. They can struggle to get out of this area in time. So it is a good thing for hunters to go along the river and get them back up in the mountains or continue to push them farther south.
Yeah.
But a lot of guys don't hunt the river.
And it's an August tag.
Right. And they're there.
And they're there, and it's not very, but it's warm. It's at a certain time of year, and that's where I've taken a lot of these a lot of first time hunters.
And the particulars with shooting along the river are the river is public and the river bed is public. Oftentimes, and I don't know where you're at, but oftentimes on both sides you have private residences on both sides. So you have to take that shot, and it has to be pretty damn good in order to get that elk down on the river.
Yep. Yeah. So, and that's where I wouldn't take a young kid. You need to shoot a solid rifle that will keep that elk in the corridor. And that story I was telling earlier, that man is shooting on that corridor and not taking, the next year, the same exact hunter, the elk stepped out in that corridor and he hit that elk absolutely perfect. It took 5 steps and fell over dead.
Yep.
Just with making sure that I had just practiced with him. I mean, the first time around, it's like, oh, here's your shooting sticks. Like, oh, sit in this chair. Right. Here's your, the
things we take for granted that they may have no clue what they're doing.
So if you're going to have somebody shoot off of shooting sticks or, shoot in a particular way, it's best to just practice those things. And that was on me. That's why I have to look at it. That was on me. If I'm going to say, I will take you out for this, like, let's go and practice this. You're going to be on these sticks. You're going to be in this chair. It's really great elk hunting. You're going to sit in this chair.
You've got the desk laid out for them.
And you're going to have
you really just have to pull the trigger, honestly.
Shooting sticks are right there, and the elk should come out over there. And when they get right out there, I'll whistle at them. They'll stop and shoot it right there.
Right.
So, but
that's awesome.
Sometimes it kind of works that way.
Yeah. No, that's great. Well, let's go back in time then, so people get to know you a little bit and how you started off. You and I had a conversation about the difference between you and my dad is pretty big. He came from an extremely, overpopulated city, never learning anything about the outdoors, and then came here. How did you get into hunting and at what age, and give us a little bit of a synopsis?
Yeah, I mean, I was just so incredibly fortunate in that, just like polar opposites, like you've already said. I was actually born in Michigan, but fortunately my parents moved to Montana when I was 1, so I didn't know any different. And my dad did quite a bit of hunting in Michigan. He tells stories of, rowing around in his little rowboat and trying to shoot ducks on lakes. So my dad was always kind of a hunter, but when he came to Montana, he definitely fell in with like hunting people, and he started bird hunting, and he did some duck hunting and some bird hunting in Michigan, but he fell in with this guy that is at the highest level of pointing dog hunting, like in America. That's who I got to mentor with.
Wow.
Like no names said.
Right.
So, I was able to, I remember if I wouldn't have gone to school today, I would have brought my little break action shotgun that was given to me.
You can send me the photo and I'll put it up.
8 years old. So even before 8 though, like shooting gophers with my dad, that was, something I don't agree with now. But at the time, if my dad had a day off from work, it's like, what do you guys want to do? There was no hesitation for me and my older brother. We're going shoot gophers. Yep. We just loved to go and do that. I don't remember when I shot my first 22. It was probably like 4 years old or something like that. And then I would go along on hunting trips with my dad before I could even hunt at all, going on these great bluegrass hunts, in the 4-wheel drive Scout up this terrible mountain. And then, they would shoot these bluegrouse, and I remember handling the bluegrouse, and just the smells and everything were just so amazing. I could not wait to do it on my own.
Right.
And then as an 8-year-old for Christmas, I got my break action 20 gauge shotgun. And I mean, this is how just spoiled and just in my face it was. So I don't have a hunting license or anything, but they're going to take me shooting a duck. My dad and this friend, and the friend is this architect also. So our blind is, we're going to go to one of these new houses he's building along this spring creek. And when the ducks come in, we're in the house, we see where the ducks land, and then we're going to just walk out from the house because we can stay warm. And then we're going to jump shoot them. I mean, just imagine this.
Yeah.
And then I had my older brother. So we would both go up together, and he got his first duck pretty early on. And pretty soon, my dad only brought so many shells, and I hadn't gotten a duck. And the very last shell he had was just like a Clay's shell.
Yeah.
And I killed a drake on like the very last. So that was like
That's
8 years
awesome.
old, duck out of the air.
Yep.
And I mean, just such a crazy different world. When I was 10 and my brother was 12, my mom would drop us off on a huge ranch. There's spring creeks all around, and we would hunt alone. And we would shoot my brother's limit of mallards, jump shooting, as a 10-year-old and a 12-year-old, just like complete insanity. Like they would lock my parents up now, but that was a long time ago. And so just such an amazing introduction. And we lived out of town on the Yellowstone River. So I grew up fly fishing, and we wouldn't even go down until you couldn't almost see. That's when it gets good. When it gets dark is when it gets good. And so I grew up on the Yellowstone. My dad introduced me to especially bird hunting. He wasn't really a big game hunter, but as a kid, it's like, I really want a big game hunt. But we kind of had to figure that out a little bit on our own. But my other, things that were just there for me. My dad was a doctor in the community. So when we were like, we want to go deer hunting. So he just started to ask around, and he knew ranchers, and we could drive around on their property. And
that's awesome.
kind of just shooting them out of the vehicle. And, anyway, it was
So you fell in love with bird hunting first.
My introduction to hunting was it was birds first, but then I just had this huge urge to hunt deer and hunt elk. And my first introduction to elk was my dad had patients that lived right on the Yellowstone Park border. And we'd go up there during the migration, and we would stay at their cabin and jump in these Jeeps and chained up and go to the top of the mountain. And gosh, awesome. That was my first elk hunting experience. And then I had this exposure to amazing pointing dogs, where my dad's friend would run 4 or 5 Brittany's at a time. And so I got to see what was truly possible with pointing dogs. But at the time, it wasn't my passion to do.
Right.
And then when I came here, I liked duck hunting, and I did lots and lots of duck hunting. And then recently, 15 years ago, I just transitioned from ducks because our local area really started to change. And, that landowner that I used to go hunting there, it sold, no more access. And this trend was happening where it was hard to go and surrounded by public land. So then I bought a pointer and then became a upland bird hunter,
Right.
and love that now, and then take people elk hunting.
Yeah,
So,
that's awesome. Yeah, I've always had, and maybe this is when things started to change, but when I was, a teenager, all my friends were duck hunting all the time. And I think I went one time every year, and every time I'd go, I'd be like, oh yeah, I remember why I'm not doing this. And it's because you're waking up so early, so much gear, packing all this stuff. And even if you get your limit, I'm looking at the ducks going, this is not a lot of meat. If I would have gotten a deer or an elk, that would be a lot of meat. Yeah. So I try, I think I try it one time every year, and I go, okay, I'm good for the year. But there is something about upland birds that I haven't dove into, but I know where so many spots are for chukar and grouse. And oftentimes when I'm archery hunting, if I find a grouse, I'll have a field tip, I'll get my grouse, and I'll go home and I'll feel totally satisfied with a grouse from an arrow. But that's something I haven't dove into that I'd love to start trying.
Well, the upland birds, they provide some meat. Like I shoot between blue grouse and chukars. It's all of our like chicken that a typical person would eat. And then the elk, or half an elk, is like all of that red meat. But the thing I just love so much about like the bird hunting is there's no doubt, I love to hunt. I love to be outside. I love the exercise of it. I hunt very often by myself, and it's like we're like our little team. Like I run 2 or 3 pointing dogs at a time, and it's really fun to see them just get better at what they're doing. And I mean, it is just such a blast to have hunting dogs. And when I used to duck hunt, that was I would say that was the best part about duck hunting too, is that you have this lab, or I had this lab, and it's my duck dog. And what are you doing in July? You're training your dog. August, you're training your dog. There's all this training. And then when you actually go out to the marsh and you're duck hunting, and then all these things come together, it's just like so satisfying.
That's awesome.
And then you have the meat, and that's like the bonus.
Right.
That my wife never liked.
Well, maybe I wonder if that's what it was. I actually really love duck, like smoked duck, smoking it just like this, and dipped in mustard. But I felt like I was having to do all these things to make it. But once you do it, it's amazing. I remember similar story to you. I started hunting, shooting ground squirrels with my dad. My dad would drive all the way up Trail Creek, and there was this one spot where he would back the truck in, and the tailgate would be sitting in this open prairie. And you would just post up and wait for them to pop up, and you'd shoot them. And I it's surprising because I would never take my kid to do that at this point, because I value the meat so much on the things that I shoot. And I don't care about just killing things. I actually feel bad when I kill things now. When did that transition happen for you, where it was all of a sudden about the meat and no longer about, I'm going to go shoot things because it's fun?
Well, even by the time I was 18, I would have consciously not gone and done and just killed gophers for killing them. It was highly motivational for me as a kid. There's there's something about it that was really fun. But when I look back at that time, like I don't have kids, but when I look back at that time, I think my dad could have fostered it in another way, just as well.
Right.
And then also taught me some lessons about waste too. Like if you're gonna, and we all know people that have parents or grandparents that say, "You shot that?
Yeah.
Well, you get that clean now because you're gonna eat it." And we didn't eat those gophers. Right. And
I had friends that if they shot a crow, they would be eating crow, which I thought was so funny because my parents weren't like that at all. My dad really found he would buy into anything that would allow for fun. So if he heard that ground squirrels kill cows because cows step in the holes and break their legs, then it's like, well, we got to go kill all the ground squirrels, So he was able to compromise in probably what he knew was right to let's just go do it. Yeah. And now he's changed so much. He's much more like me and probably you in all of this. But I remember I remember that transition of all of a sudden realizing that I was taking life, and if I was going to take life, it needed to be to continue my own, not just for fun.
Yeah, I mean, kind of related to what we're talking about there is like the word like hunting to me, like really like means something to me. And if I get the opportunity to talk about it, just like hunting is like, you're going to eat it. And so when I was saying to people, like, I'm going wolf hunting, this was a few years ago. Like, I'm going wolf hunting.
Right.
Well, that means if I'm successful, that's wolf eating.
Yeah. Right.
And I'm going to follow through on that.
Did you ever get one?
I did.
Did you eat it?
I did.
How was it?
It was awesome.
No
it was
way.
so good. It was so good that when we had a day where we didn't have students at school, and I kind of organized, okay, everyone bring a game.
Yeah.
And like, let's share up front what we're bringing. I'm not going to like say, hey, we're going to have carnitas and you're going to love them, and I'm going to tell them it's wolf later. I tell them early, right up front. What you're going to have here is going to be like the whole hind leg.
I can't believe you didn't have parents showing up, everything. Like, what are you
whole
doing?
hind leg.
You're feeding our kids dog?
No. This was only teachers. Only teachers. No
good.
kids, no students. So only teachers. And there were a few, like, I don't know if Mr. and I shouldn't say names here, but anyway, there's a teacher.
I knew you were about to say.
There's a teacher I really thought, like, he's not going for wolf. This is going to be really, he's just going to, no way.
Yep.
But there was, we definitely had elk, and some people did some elk sausages, and there was some great stuff, and there was bird, and it was really fun. But the wolf carnitas were just an absolute hit. And it was like, it was kind of like pork, but it was also just kind of like rich beef. And it was awesome.
That is awesome.
It was awesome. And then I have a friend who just loves shanks. So I gave him all the shanks, and he cooked them up, and he loved the shanks. But that entire wolf got eaten. All of the kind of scrappy stuff, I just cut and put into like my game bird grind, because I take all my chucker legs and debone all those things, and then I just put the wolf scrap in there, and then I combine that with some pork and make chorizo and breakfast sausage, and no one would ever know.
Right.
That's the thing. Like, make some stuff from your game that's so delicious, no one would ever know. They're not like, oh yeah, this is good for bear. Right. They're like, this is so good.
I've never heard of anyone eating a wolf, but they should.
If you're going wolf hunting, otherwise call it wolf shooting.
Totally. No, you're totally right. I remember the first time I had like predator meat was from a mountain lion, and it was a back strap of a mountain lion, and it was cut up, and I didn't know what it was, but I remember it was presented to me, and they're like, "What do you think it is?" And I was like, "It's pork. Like it looks just like pork." And they said, "Well, try it." I tried it. I was like, "Pork." It tasted just like pork, and they're like, "This is a mountain lion." Yeah. I couldn't believe it. Was completely blown away. But that's awesome.
And that's what I was going to mention. I've had mountain lion before too, and just thought, this is really great. And one of my last chucker hunts this year, I found some great big paw prints. So then part of that's like, oh, here's this potentially this great big majestic cat, right? And why would I want to go and hunt that? Well, because deep down, I'll admit it, like I love to hunt, and then I'm going to eat that thing.
Right. Totally.
And it's, you know what? I've had it. It's going to be amazing.
Right.
It's going to be so great.
Well, and knowing you, none of it's going to waste.
No.
Every single scrap of meat is being eaten. Even when you're talking about, I know a lot of guys who with ducks and upland game birds who they breast it out, and that's it. And sounds like you're taking the legs and.
Yeah, I have lots of legs at home for my chuckers, and then because it's a lot of work, you sit down like
that's why people only take the breast.
and they're kind of tough. So then it's like, oh, what am I going to do? Like I shoot a lot of bluegrass too. What am I going to do with these legs? And so that was quite a while ago. I figured that out. So then I debone them, and I mix them with some pork, and I make chorizo.
Yep.
And I think anyone that tried it, because really, what is it? It's it's pork, and that's definitely has a power to it, and it's just really great to use it all. So
that's awesome. So transitioning from birds to big game, what was your first big game animal?
So my first big game, I mentioned that my dad would take us on these pretty epic ranches that in Montana you'd have alfalfa fields kind of down by the river and then the hills, so the deer would just kind of come out of there. So I remember on my brother's first hunt when he was 12, we drive out there in the Suburban and, there's the deer. So Dad gets like 200 yards away and then
driving right up to them.
Pretty much. I'm pretty sure I mean, you shoot them. This is Montana. You just shoot them off the hood.
These are pet deer.
You shoot them off the hood of the truck. So my brother-in-law and shoots this really, this is the biggest like 2-point you'd ever seen. Like this is really nice buck.
Yep.
So then eventually and then even on that though, like I said, my dad wasn't much of a big game hunter. Like we got out the paper, like the Sunday paper that, if you've ever seen this, like this is how you do it. Like my dad's a surgeon, and and it's like, well, how are we going to do this? And then, but I'm really like into that sort of stuff. I did that. My dad didn't do it. My older brother didn't do it. I just got right in there, and I've always loved that stuff. And so then my first deer is on the same property, probably, within hundreds of yards of where my brother got his. And so when we drove in there, we were driving in there up this one canyon. There's this great buck, a big 4x4. This is super awesome buck. So I get to shoot first.
Right.
So we're sneaking up in there and we're getting close. We're almost to where this big buck is. And then all of a sudden this spike runs out. And, I'm 12 and my dad's like, okay, there's a buck, shoot it. Shoot it. And then in my mind, I'm like, I don't really want to shoot this one. I want to shoot that other one. But I wasn't going to say no. And I wasn't fully committed. And I remember the shot, like to this day, I can feel it. I'm right on it. And just as I'm pulling, I kind of just yank it. I shoot it right in the neck.
Did drop?
Just down. And I shoot like a little spike. He's like, just this little spike. Guess what that 4-point did? He stepped right out for my brother to kill him. He just came right out.
So your brother got 2 good bucks in a row.
My brother always got to shoot the great big bucks. This great big whitetail buck. He was always in these great big bucks. And it's like, how does this happen?
That's funny.
And that's what that was my first deer.
That's awesome. And so then when you moved here, is that when you started doing elk?
Well, so then I hunted cow elk.
Because you don't even go for deer now, right?
No, my wife doesn't like to eat them. I don't know if you ever saw that buck I shot in 2010 on the desert. That's a super nice buck in that 40, in that great draw area.
Oh, yeah.
And I did everything I could to make it just super tasty and aged it and clean and no sinew. And like the first bite, when I was all excited that she's going to take this burger bite, she's just like, no.
Wow. Well, I'll say this. I think that mule deer, it is all about where it's shot as far as what area did you shoot it in. Because if I shoot one that I don't know how long it takes for what they're eating to become them, but if I shoot one anywhere near the sagebrush, it's always going to taste bad. If I shoot one in a burn area, it's going to taste like the most tender meat you've ever had. It's going to taste, and Amory and I have both experienced this. I shot an elk and a deer same year in almost the same spot. They were maybe 200 yards from each other, and the deer was by far better. And I don't know why that was. Usually elk is less gamey. The deer was a little tiny bit gamey, but I kind of like that flavor. But the tenderness was out of this world compared to the elk. So I think it's all about where that animal is shot.
Bottom line, though, if she wasn't going to eat it,
you're not going to make it.
Yeah, so that was the last. I've shot deer since then because I have one friend in particular that really struggles to get a deer, but loves deer.
Yeah, totally.
And I love to hunt, and so I've been, on occasion, I've gotten a deer and deliver it over there.
Yeah, no, that's awesome.
And then, but actually, some other elk hunting I did in Montana. I started bow hunting elk in Montana.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I had
Because you do not bow hunt now.
no, but I bow hunted. That was like, and still when I look back at it, like one of the most enjoyable things I've ever done is the bow hunting that I've done. You're just like super intimate with the animals.
Right.
And I mean, I learned how to be an elk hunter bow hunting. If you want to be a good elk hunter, if you're a rifle hunter, bow hunt for a few years,
Right.
and you'll learn a lot. But anyway, I had, back in, that would have been like in 85 or so, 86. So a long time ago, the first elk I ever shot at with a bow, I hit it high, never recovered it. So I learned, I experienced that early on, like spending an entire day,
Yep.
where the blood trail is super thick, where he's stopping and it's like, I'm going to get him.
Right.
And it just peters out and we never, ever find that elk.
Yep. And it happens. It's hard. It's tough to say this, but it does happen often, even with bow hunters who are really, really good. And I had an experience 2 years ago that still, I'll wake up in the middle of the night thinking about it and won't be able to go to bed. It's like heart wrenching, where I shot, and people aren't going to believe this, because if someone told me this, I'd be like, well, you just hit it bad. I was hunting in this spot where we had parked our vehicles. We hiked up a ridge, maybe 200 yards, hiked up a ridge and looked on the other side, and there were elk coming up towards us. We thought, because it was like noon, I thought we were going way far in. We're going to be calling, 2 or 3 ridges over, a couple mile hike. And we hike up and over this thing, and there's elk heading up towards us. So we get behind a boulder, wait for where I think the elk are going to come out, and they came out right where I thought they were going to. I made one cow call, and the lead cow booked around us perfectly within shooting distance. And then this bull comes out. He was a young 5x5, but still, he was a cool looking bull. He comes out and stops perfectly at shooting distance, 25 yards, and I'm fully drawn back. I shoot. Everything just went perfect, I thought. And he turns and runs down into the canyon, and I'm like, that's for sure a dead bull. Like, I hit it right where I thought I wanted to. And then I see him go down to the canyon, and I'm peeking over trying to figure out what happened. And then I start seeing him going up, and I'm like, well, that's not good. Like, I don't want to see him going up. He's going up the ridge, and I see the arrow, and it is maybe in him this far. And it was right where it should be. And the only thing we can think of is that it was stuck perfectly in a rib and it just wouldn't push through. And so I'm like screaming at this point, please, like run into a tree, dig it a little farther, do something. And we watched this thing run up the hill, and the arrow was just bending. It wasn't shifting in him. It was just bending right in his side. And he ran up and over the ridge, and we chased him for 2 days, following this little tiny blood trail that was dripping off the fletchings of the arrow, and never found him. Eventually it petered out, and he merged with another herd, and then we couldn't figure out where his tracks were anymore. But I couldn't believe it. And I'm a big guy.
Yeah,
I'm shooting an 80-pound bow, and my draw length is really far. That thing hit hard, and it just stuck perfectly in that spot. Like I said, I know I'm going to get comments about people being like, bullshit, no way. But we followed that thing, and then I had some validation later where a hunter reached out to me and said that he found a bull. He shot a bull that had an arrow stuck in him, and I don't think it was mine, but it was stuck in the rib, just like I had said. And he ended up taking this down, and he had actually called this bull in. The bull was still fully in rut and came in, and he ended up taking it. But he said perfect arrow stuck right in the rib.
They're tough.
They're tough. I mean, how do you prevent that? Like a bullet's going through.
Yeah, some interesting things can happen, with elk.
Yeah.
So after I did that, and I was I think that was about when I was a senior in high school when I made that I can call it a bad shot. I mean, that was before range finding.
Yeah.
We were shooting instinctively, whatever, I was inexperienced. I'm with a 19-year-old friend, I mean, the mentors that were around us showing us were nil, they weren't any. And, but then, I was enjoying this bow hunting thing. And then probably when I was 22, I was a student at Montana State. And my brother and I had been hunting really hard, like up early and, going and just nothing's working out on the, for the bow. And then one morning, it was a Saturday and we're like, we're going to sleep in. We were tired, and about noon, we're going to go to because this is how it works with hunting sometimes. It's like, going to go to a totally new place.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Especially if you're waking up late.
Totally new place. There's no motor vehicles, but it's a pretty easy bike ride. And we're kind of figuring it out. We're going to go in on this road. And so we're college bike riders. So I remember I had my spandex tights on. I got my bow pack. And so I got my bow and stuff ready. And we're just biking into this place. And fortunately, we get tired at the certain spot. So we kind of just plunk our bikes over. And I say, well, I'll give a call right here.
Yeah.
And this bull bugles back just like 50 yards away. Like, oh my gosh, there's a bull right here. And if you can see all the hard work that went before. Anyway, so all of a sudden I'm standing here, I'm in spandex tights, my bow, I don't have my release and all this stuff. And so I kind of gather my stuff and start heading off in this direction. And I think my brother didn't even bring his bow stock.
Wow.
He didn't even bring the stuff, which was good. And I don't know, I went a ways and I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot my release. I go back and get my release and I start and then everything kind of like, this is a hunt. Like he's bugling or we're back and forth and he's just kind of taking his cows back up the hill, but he'd kind of come toward me. I'd never see him. There was pretty thick trees, but he would come toward and then he would back off and then he'd come toward and I would pursue and he'd back off. And then pretty soon I just like kind of look around and like every tree is trashed where I'm standing. Like you're
in his domain.
I am in his domain. And that's when he came. And he came right in just trashing a tree in front of me. But he had a tree on his vitals. And so I made a little call. I remember I made a little call and he just spun 180, cleared his vitals out, started raking the tree.
Yep.
And I was so excited. I mean, so I pull back and I remember the bow was just like jittering, and by this time he's kind of looking at me, but I'm like, oh, okay, it's kind of, I'm doing the best I can here. And then zing. And then I hit that bull. I hit him I'm surprised I even hit him really because it was so exciting and I hit him a little far back. I probably hit him like hind rib, but he was a little quartered. So I guess maybe it wasn't that bad of a shot, but I'm telling you, I was excited.
Right.
And I had lost the last elk I'd ever shot at. I had lost.
Yep.
And so my brother gets up there and I'm telling him all about it. And so we wait like a half hour and start to follow this elk. And there's not much blood with a shot like that. And, but we start to see some blood and he ends up on a pretty defined game trail. And then pretty soon as we're going down the trail, like there's some blood and then there's just along the trail, there's nothing. You're just like nothing. We can't find. And then it's just where you sink, right? You just like, everyone's just like, oh my gosh, this is a beautiful bull. Like, I'm not going to recover this thing. And, maybe I shouldn't have, at the time, I'm just a kid. I'm 20 years old. Like you're shaking around. I'm not going to take the shot. And I would try to do that now. Like if the wind was blowing so much, I couldn't be steady on my shot. I might not take the shot.
Right.
Because what I've learned is spending the day looking, it's okay to walk off a mountain without the animal.
Yeah.
You can sleep pretty well that night.
Right.
When you walk off that mountain with a wounded animal that you're maybe not going to recover,
you're not sleeping for a while.
You're not sleeping. It can be pretty difficult. But anyway, we couldn't find any blood. And then in my mind, it's like, I just need to go back to the last blood. And if he's hurt pretty bad, he's going to go downhill.
Right.
And when it was crazy, when we went back to the blood and just looked downhill, he was right there. He was just totally right there.
Right. Yep. And it's funny because I feel like most tracking experiences, you end up having that moment For some weird reason, there's that moment of, I might not have killed this thing. This thing might not be totally dead. Most tracking experiences I've had that, unless you see where it went down, you're going to have that gut sinking feeling, but I'm going to be out here for a couple days looking for this thing. So I got to find it. But no, I get the feeling.
It's so great when it's there and you find it.
And then what's the undertaking after that people, for those who don't hunt elk and think, oh, I'm going to go try hunting elk. What kind of work does it take to get that elk out after
So that was a Montana bull, which they're significantly bigger. My brother's with me. He was a big guy. And we just tried to like get him so he was like butthole downhill for some gutting.
Right.
We we could hardly move this creature because it was a 300 class 6-point. I mean, it's a huge bull.
That's awesome.
And so it just
shot in spandex off a mountain bike.
And I'm supposed to have a test at college the next day where everyone's there. I'm forgetting the name of that test. Like everyone's got to be there.
Right. SAT, something like
I've
that.
got to contact my professor. Like I got to pack out an elk and and I got to try to borrow a 4-wheeler or whatever it was that we were going to use for part of the distance. But we pulled that stuff all together. And so that would have been when I was still in college. And then I became a teacher here, and I was so excited to hunt elk, especially with a bow. Because then my year was I bow hunt, and then I would duck hunt because I like to hunt. Like I'm going to be able to hunt all the way into January, and then I had my hunting dogs, and so I do that. And then so when I came here, our bow hunting is very, very good here. And then it was like 1998 where it is, when it comes together, it just comes together.
Right.
You have these things that just look like they're going to be so perfect, and then something happens, and then this elk hunt, just one of these crazy, amazing days where I was in a new place, but I had been right next to it and seen all the elk in there, and I didn't really kind of know my way around exactly. And it was early in the season. It was Labor Day weekend, so they weren't really fired up yet, and it was kind of warm. And it was so long ago, like before I knew anything, I was carrying 1 liter of water, no ability to pump water or purify water, and I'm going elk hunting all day. You're just just stupid.
Right.
And so I'm on this loop, and there's elk sign everywhere, and we could see these wallows. We knew these wallows were down in there from looking at it from the other ridge from the weekend before. And, just about maybe 2 hours before dark, I went down through those wallows calling and stuff, and nothing was happening. And then I looked across the canyon, and I saw a bull up on this little bench. And I thought, man, I think I can stalk that thing up there. And I was pretty tired. This was like all day. I've got my 1 liter of water. Right. And so I put the stock on this little bench, and I'm hoping he's going to be right there. And he's not there. It's been a long time because it was way up there. I had to motivate myself to even go up there.
Right.
So I get all the way up there, and then it's like, okay, well, I might as well try a bugle. It is getting kind of later now, and the entire canyon just bugles.
Ooh.
And I hadn't heard one.
Right.
Just bugles.
You set them off.
Everywhere. So then I go down by the wallow because that's where the majority of the bugling is happening, and I kind of moved. So how did that work out? I have to think about how crazy this was. Like the bull that I end up shooting, is coming into the wallow, but the wind is wrong, and then I could hear him coming because he has a super distinct one of those crazy
gurgly,
just crazy. And so my wind hits him, he leaves. I go down. I get a shot at his 6-point, put it right over his back. I mean, just like before rangefinders. This is 98. I mean, how many people were running around with some people were. I wasn't.
Right.
And
I got my first rangefinder from you.
Yeah, when we talked.
After I told you a story about me missing, you're like, you need a rangefinder, borrow this.
These things are amazing.
Thanks.
So I put it over his back. I'm exhausted. This is like a full day, and I'm getting thirsty, and I'm getting hungry, and so I'm going like, oh God, and I'm not quite sure how I'm going to get out of here. I'm pretty far back, like 5 probably 5 miles for my truck and like 2-hour drive home.
Gosh.
And so I start walking out and then I hear that growly sucker go off again back at the wall. I'm like, okay, you never, ever walk away from elk.
Right.
You never.
Right.
Like if you can see elk and you have a chance of getting there before dark, like you go.
You're right.
Like, just go.
Yep.
And don't walk away from that thing because it could happen.
Oh, yeah.
Even though I thought it was over before. So I go up in there and I change how I kind of set up on the wall. And he's coming. I watch him get into the wallow, roll around.
Wow, that's awesome.
Stand up. But now it's getting kind of late. He's standing at 40 yards. I don't want to take the shot. It's late. And I don't feel really comfortable with it. So I got to get him closer. So I call and he responds and he's in these pretty thin trees, 4 yards.
Oh my God.
4 yards. And I almost take the shot through the trees, but I didn't. Like I thinking it's only from here to the wall, you know? I mean, it's this far away. And but I didn't take that shot. And then I'm on full draw, and then it clears out through the trees, and then right at the last tree is a broken off tree.
Yeah.
And he comes out the end of it and just like sticks his head out and looks, I mean, right at me.
Yep.
And I'm on one knee at full draw, and all I see is his head.
Yep.
Like, okay, come on, just go, a little more.
Right.
And but I can't hold forever. And then I start to notice like, okay, I can't do this.
Right.
I said in my mind, because I don't remember the times exactly, but he might've been standing there like a full minute.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay, this is over. I'm like,
He's beat me.
He beat me.
Yeah.
I'm going to come off a draw and it's over and it's been great.
Right.
Because this is the way it usually goes. And so I just come off draw, just knowing he's going to blow. And he just takes 2 more steps out and stops. And when I shoot this thing, the arrow goes out the other side. It just, like your experience where
Stuck
where it stopped.
Yeah.
Like it
went right
through the ribs so cleanly that I heard that arrow out through the trees. And I watched that bull take a few steps and just fall over. But then reality sets in. Like I'm pack is off while
my water's gone.
While he's finishing off, like he's still actually alive as I'm standing next to him.
Yep.
Like pack is off, knife is coming out, like it's getting dark. I'm pretty far from the truck. I don't even know where the heck I am really. And get him, got it, and I'll remember that like it was so hot inside, and you're by yourself,
right?
I'm by myself, with this great big bull, and I've got to get it gutted, like it is dark, but I get that done, and then I'm tired. And I'm going out there. I've got 5 miles to go to the truck, and I'm so thirsty. I don't even care. The first creek I get to, I just drink right out of it. And it's sheep country. But it doesn't matter. I mean, I have no other option. I just need to drink water and get out of there.
Deal with Giardia later.
And I never got anything.
That's good.
And then round up, friends to try to help that next day. And my electrolytes were so screwed up that day. I had terrible cramps and all this stuff going on, getting that bull out. But that was a great elk hunt.
That's awesome. I had a similar type of story. It's a funny story. I was driving out from a morning hunt. I was driving out. I had just finished my morning hunt and I didn't have a lot of time. I was trying to make it back to work. So I'm coming back down the mountain. And as I'm coming back down the mountain, it's probably noon that I'm driving out. And I look over, and at noon, animals are not standing out in the open at noon in September. There was this nice big 5x5 elk standing right on the edge of a forest covered in mud. He looked completely pitch black, just standing there eating. I parked my vehicle and just watched him and was like, he didn't care. Just let me watch him. And in my mind, I'm just thinking the weekend's about to happen. Should I try to get this elk now? How can I? Because he already knows I'm here. My vehicle's parked right here. I don't know why he's not running. So I thought, it's a tiny little forest. I know where that wallow is. I'm going to wait until the weekend's over and come back in here. So I drove home. I don't think I slept the entire weekend just thinking, what am I doing? Why am I not going back in there? But at that time, I was so strict on myself about, you're not hunting the weekends. Everyone hunts the weekends. The mountains are going to be covered in that area. You're going to come back on the weekday. So I went back on a Monday evening thinking he's going to come right back out into that pasture to feed. And I wanted to position myself between him where I knew he was wallowing during the day and where I saw him feeding. So I'm hiking this game trail back towards where the wallow is. And on the way, I stopped and watched a buck walk right past me. Could have easily shot it, but I didn't. Then a big bull moose steps out on the path that I'm walking towards. And if anyone knows me and anyone's hunted with me, I am like deathly afraid of moose. Out of all the animals, bear, wolves, mountain lion, I don't care about any of them. Moose are the ones that are going to stomp you for no reason. And so this moose steps out and I'm like terrified already. No reason to be. He's not being very threatening. But I continue to kind of push him because I'm trying to get to this elk, but he's not moving. And I'm like stepping towards him, making myself known, and he's not moving. He's just standing on the path that I need to go. So I start kind of trying to get around him. Finally, I sneak up on a ridge that I didn't have to hike to get all the way around this moose. And now I'm back on the trail going in. As I walk, 3 cow moose stop me in the forest. So at this point, I'm surrounded by moose. There's one 100 yards this way, and there's 3 like 25 yards in front of me. And so I didn't know what to do. It was starting to get dark, but I knew that elk had to be less than 75 yards in the forest at this wallow. So I just started calling, and I was trying all my cow calls. The moose are not moving. They're just feeding all around me. And I'm sitting here waiting to see what happens. And I grabbed my last call, and I have mouth reeds. I have all these different cow calls. I grabbed my last call, which is just a hoochie mama, and I just blow this hoochie mama twice. And I hear this bull running towards me, and I start seeing little trees, little aspen trees, boom, just being plowed over as he's running towards me. And I saw mud flying off of him before he even got to me. I just see little chunks of mud flying up in the air as he's running towards me. And it happened so quick, I didn't even have a chance to draw my bow back. I barely was stood up at that point. And he's facing me 10 yards, just face on shot. And I had my bow up like this to try to just cut my face so he maybe wouldn't know what I was. But I hadn't pulled it back or anything. And he positions himself where a tree is on his right, and he keeps just popping his head around it because he knows something's up. He's like, this thing looks weird. I don't know what it is. Wind was blowing right in my face, which was great. And I'm shaking at this point because everything happened so quick. And at first I thought a moose was coming at me. I didn't know what was happening. And he turns and like runs back. As fast as he ran in, he runs back. And so I blew the hoochie mama 2 more times, and I hear him coming back. And this time he's trying to cut downwind from me. And I still didn't move, but I knew the path that he was going to kind of go. So I drew back. It was maybe a 10-yard shot, maybe a 10-yard shot. And same thing, the arrow blew right through him. I could never even find the arrow. I was on my hands and knees looking for that thing forever. But he was covered in so much mud that the mud just plugged his hole. I couldn't find any blood or anything, but all I could do was follow his mud trail. So I just followed his mud trail 70 yards up the mountain, and there he was. But I'll tell you, I called friends. I right after I shot, I called some buddies who owe me a lot of pack outs. And I said, you guys are going to have to come out and get this elk with me. And they said, well, are you with the elk right now? No. Well, we're not coming out there until you find the elk. Well, it's dead. I need you guys to come out here. And they kept saying, like, we're not coming out there. You may have missed. And I'm like, no, it's for sure dead. Like, there's no way I didn't hit this thing. It was 10 yards away. But yeah, sure enough, 70 yards up, right in between the mud hole and where I was standing, he was piled up. And that was still one of the funnest adrenaline rushing experiences I've had hunting. But I haven't had a ton of success archery hunting elk. I think I've gone 7 times, and I think I've only successfully gotten one bull elk. And I've had some rifle bull elk that I've gotten, but but I still can't not do it. I just love it. It's so much fun being in their environment and being around with them. And I know that I can always get a deer. But elk, I don't know. Even this last year I had a rifle tag and I missed archery the entire time.
Well, I said it earlier, like archery elk is one of the greatest things. I've had so much fun doing it. The thing that keeps me from it now is I have pointing dogs, and they're super high demand.
Right.
And blue grouse opens, right there, September 1st, end of August. And, I just can't wait to be doing that.
Right.
I get a puppy this spring.
Yep.
So I'll have a 16-week-old out there, and it's just so much fun to just get that going.
Right. Do you ever run into archery hunters while you're shooting your shotgun?
I did I have many times, and sometimes I've had them. I don't know how much you guys can bleep stuff or whatever.
Sure. Say whatever you got.
So anyway, I was on this hunt with my friend. I mean, I never go early. It's like midday, and my friend and I was like, there's just this huge pile of elk cut. We start going down this canyon. There's just 100 elk going out across this hillside. Like, wow. I'm just like, hey, do you see all the elk over there? Talking to my bird hunting buddy. And from down in the canyon is like, you motherfuckers.
Yep.
So, but that it's kind of rare. I mean, I bird hunt middle of the day, and,
I've had nothing but positive experiences running into bird hunters. I had one where I was on this ridge line, and I saw something running to me through the forest, and I just bugled. So you immediately assume, oh, there's an elk coming for me. So I get knelt down. I'm like ready to pull back just in case, and I see a dog. And I'm like, what is going on? And it just didn't register at all. I see a dog, and then I slowly see an orange vest coming up. Yeah. And he was nothing but apologetic. And I'm like, dude, this is all public land. Like, you can hunt wherever you want. He's like, I didn't even realize archery season. It was the first day of archery. I didn't even realize archery started today. Yeah. But yeah, I have guys, especially the area that I'm in, there's so much grouse. I have a lot of guys who hunt grouse in this area, and I don't even feel like it ever spooks the elk out.
Yeah, they might just be used to that sound. I don't know.
Yeah, it never seems to be an issue.
Yeah.
So now you've done, you have gone through bird hunting, and obviously you still do it. You hunt for cow elk, but now you've transitioned into a mentorship role, which is really important for a lot of people trying to get into hunting. You have to have that mentor, because you can get educated. You can take all the hunter's education you want, but you're going to end up wounding a lot of animals before that, unless you have a really solid mentor. So tell me a little bit about your love for taking people out and teaching them the ropes.
Yeah. I mean, I've told you about my background, just how fortunate I was to have it just given to me. And then it probably, so a teacher at the high school approached me one day. This was quite a while ago now, maybe 10 years or 12 years ago now. And he wasn't a hunter, and he said, would you be willing to show my son what's up with elk hunting? And I just immediately was on that. And then, so it was from the ground up, he really hadn't shot. So it's really fun. Oh, you're going to need a rifle, and so you get to buy a rifle and get that going and just learn how to shoot. And then he didn't get a cow elk the first year. He got a 200-yard shot on a cow the first morning he was ever out.
Wow.
And
spoiled.
And just missed. And then that was this. So I know that year, that was 12 years ago. That was 10, because that was the one year I didn't get a cow elk. because then I started hunting that trophy buck and didn't put the time in on my own elk. And we hunted a bit more that year, and then he ended up not getting an elk that first year. And then later on with me, he shot his first cow. And it actually leads me to like there are some shots you really need to practice. If you're a right-handed shooter, you have to have left-handed prone practiced.
Right.
Because that when the hill runs that certain way and you can't lay that way. So we've got this, I have this shot lined up for him, but he can't do it righty and lefty. It's right there for him. It's like 250 yards. Like, have you ever shot lefty? And then don't try something for the first time in the field on an animal. And so we had to move from that position to another position, which was just about as bad. I remember having to kind of like wedge my body kind of up to his body so he could get it stabilized. And then he shot his first elk. And then
a lot of people think, I don't think a lot of people understand. You have a lot of people from the Midwest who their max range that they're shooting is 80 yards. And even when I tell someone from Wisconsin, I have family in Wisconsin, if I tell them I shot something at 300 yards, they're blown away. How could you possibly shoot something at 300 yards? And for me, I'm like, that's a pretty average shot. And so I don't think people understand what it takes to actually, even on a 200-yard shot, what type of preparation, how stable you should get, how confident you should be at 200 yards in order to pull the trigger.
Yeah. There was with that guy, we spent a lot of time. He was a very good shot, and so on that elk, he made a great shot. His dad came in and packed it out, and then I don't know if it was the next year or the year after, he had a bull tag, and I took off a day from school to go out with him, and that might be a picture that I can share to you. You can pop up where. He shoots this nice bull, but it's just like one of those great hunts. Like you hunt all day long and just in those last minutes, you get something to come together. And that was kind of cool how that one happened. We saw that bull go, or we saw the elk kind of moving across this area, and it took us a while to get there. Just as we got there, they just were gone. Like we were just that late.
Right.
And I've done this a bit before, and I know that when elk get scared, they go back where they came from.
Right.
It was getting dark, and I said, just shoot that hillside once. They're going to come right back out on that hill.
I've never heard of this before.
He just looked at me like...
That's what I would have looked at.
Are you kidding?
Yep.
I said, what do you got to lose? I said, you shoot that hillside, you be ready. They're going to come right back on that same line they just went on. And so he shoots the hillside, and... Unfortunately, we hadn't ranged it yet. And so then all of a sudden that bull's standing right back where he's supposed to be standing. Like, how far away is it? But it all came together, and he shot this nice bull. And then he got into it so much that, he sells some optics but beyond that, he's mentoring people.
Right.
When he tells me he took some guys out on elk this year and sent me the pictures of the elk that they got, it's just really, really satisfying to push it forward.
Right.
We hear lots of things about, anti-hunters and things like that. If you're hunting for meat and for every person you can turn on to hunting, I just think it's a great thing to do. And I really enjoy just giving back. I've shot some great elk with bow and with rifle, and some of the most satisfying moments I can look back on now are, I took a woman out. I took the first woman that I've ever taken out as a mentee, this year. Her first borning. We had the elk standing at 80 yards before shooting hours, and then we just let him go over and 100, I think she had a 180-yard shot and just hit that thing just perfect.
Right. Women always shoot better than men. Always.
Yeah.
They can follow instructions way better.
And with her too. So since she has 2 6-year-old daughters, we're already talking about we're getting 22s. And so she's going to be a hunter. They love the meat. They love making burgers. She sends me pictures of the recipe that she made. It's this thing of it's just so wonderful to have this elk in your freezer. And I have the ability to, share that with people.
Right.
And she gets one more year with me, and then I say, like, I pick up somebody else.
Right.
Yeah.
Why do you think this is important for people to learn? Like, what has this done for your life? Can you imagine your life without it?
Yeah, you just hit it right there. When I look at myself and like how much is the most enjoyable thing that I do in life, it's what I do.
Right.
I hunt, and it ends up being year round for me. I mean, now hunting season's over, but now I start to like run and work on fitness because that's part of like hunting.
Right.
And plus I have these crazy dogs that need to get out.
Oh, yeah.
And it's just, it's the food that I eat. It's the stuff, it's what I love to do. And so having the opportunity to, to share that with people, like these 2 6-year-old girls, if they're never shown that, who knows? But they're going to be those spoiled kids that had a gun given to them on their 8th grade birthday, right?
Right.
And they're not going to shoot gophers, but they're going to shoot a lot of other stuff.
Right.
And they may enjoy it or they may not, but they'll at least have the opportunity to see if it's something what they want to do.
Right. Absolutely. And what percentage do you think of the meat you eat is from wild game?
Other than the pigs, it's 100%.
Wow.
Well, we buy some salmon, which I wish I could catch.
Right.
But if the coast was right there, there'd be way too many people here.
Totally. Well, you can catch salmon in Stanley if you want.
Yeah, I can put it. Yeah,
that's harder.
That's real
that's
fishing.
Worse than
that's
ice
like
fishing.
that fishing that what I would be doing there if somebody said, "Hey, let's go," I would be running the dogs on the hill, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I'm with you. Whenever I go steelhead or salmon fishing, I feel like if I catch one fish, that's the day. Like, that's the day. 8 hours, one fish. It's made the entire day. If you don't, it was a giant waste of time. That's how I always feel every time I go steelhead or salmon fishing.
Versus going on a chucker hunt where you get skunked. It's a great day. Like I'm tired. The dogs are tired.
Yep.
I saw some great country.
Right. When you always see something new.
Yeah.
Always.
I just
wonder how many
trucking around.
And you wonder how many people have stepped foot in some of the places that you've stepped foot in. And how far back does that go? Your foot might be somewhere that no other foot has touched for the last 30 years, which I love thinking about that while I'm up there.
Well, and you touched too on that other part of hunting that is just so cool, which is you end up being in these places you would never, ever be. That's what Mr. Foster always says. You know Mr.
Yeah. Yep.
That's what he always says. It's like, you would never be here in the dark off this trail with those stars, with that, I've been out, hiking in and you hear the snow geese flights in the dark, at that time of year, and you're not on a trail and, and it's just like, it's so awesome. The woman that I took out this year, I teach astronomy now, so my star finding is pretty great. So it was just like, we'd go for a while, it was tiring, and then go through the stars. And I mean, it was just, it's just awesome.
Yeah. Well, and as a teacher, as an educator, it's got to be awesome to be able to teach people hands-on in the mountains about things that and things that you even are talking about in the classroom. Now you can apply them while you're out in the field.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's something I've never even put together. Like, why do I enjoy doing this? Well, why do I even enjoy teaching?
Right.
I enjoy sharing, and so.
No, that's awesome. And even the conversations that you and I have shaped me into the hunter that I am, because maybe I wouldn't care as much about the meat if I didn't have people like you in my life continually pounding me on, what do you mean you made a bad shot? You need those people who are around who can give you some advice on when you screwed up and how you can do better. And even talking about guns, like you are a gunsmith at this point where your gun in and out, you've shot it. I mean, how many bullets you put through your gun before you even start sighting it in?
Quite a few. You got to break. You got to break those things in.
Right.
I would like to shoot more these days, but ammunition's kind of hard.
I literally have 6 boxes that I bought 2 years ago, and I still am on like a pre-order where I'm still in a pre-order and they still say backlogged on this ammo. And it's been a year now.
Yeah.
For this particular caliber that I really like.
Yeah, it's black. It's actually black market now.
Yeah.
Like I reload and I pick up powder tomorrow.
Right. Right. Yeah.
You know,
totally.
So, like that's where we are.
Right.
And anyway, hopefully we come out of that fairly soon because I sure like to, I like to shoot a lot.
Yeah.
And practice is a part of it. But I have some reloading stuff set aside for there are 2 women that I'm working with. The one didn't get the elk this year, and super fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on. This was awesome. We'll have to have you on again, especially if you think of any stories that pop up that would be great to tell. We'd love to have you on. And as you continue hunting, if any stories pop up that are current, let's bring you back in and we'll focus on that story and tell it.
Okay, that sounds great.
Thank you so much for the fish. It was wonderful.
Enjoy.
Will do.